Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Right on. Today's podcast is with my good friend, Cory Miller. Cory has been I was friends with Cory before I ever did the Gritty Podcast. He owned the bow shop at XXX Archery up in Rainier in the Northwest, and he helped me get my bows set up and arrows dialed, and he taught me a lot about archery and really improved my archery skill set. And he was actually the very first episode of the Gritty Podcast, episode 1. So now he's on episode 600 and something. So 650 or whatever, I'm not sure. And full circle. But Cory he's over there at Black Eagle Arrows, who has been a partner of mine since day one as well. And I love Randy Kitts. He owns Black Eagle Arrows. We talk a bit about Black Eagle Arrows. We talk a bit about arrow setups, what Cory's running nowadays, kind of what he's run in the past, what he likes, what speed of arrow he likes to run. We kind of bounce off each other, what we both are using and why and what we like. And FOC, not to FOC, how heavy of an arrow, where's that weight located, front of center or mid or throughout the arrow, distributed throughout the arrow. So it's a good conversation, and I think you're going to enjoy this one. It seems apropos to drop a code in here right now. Use the code GRITTY at Valkyrie Archery, and you can get yourself some Black Eagle X Impact arrows tipped with the Jagger Broadheads or the Hyde Mechanical, which I used on my Arizona Koozie.
Or the Blood Eagles.
Or the Blood Eagles.
He's got great names.
Yeah.
Brent, one thing he's got going for him.
Way better than Sony. The Sony MK125 microphone. It's like, come on, Sony, you're killing me. Some people get it. So check that out. Definitely go to Valkyrie and get yourself some Black Eagle X Impact, which coincidentally, Cory and I are both shooting, because it's really tough to find an arrow with the stiffness that you need, that's micro diameter, that accommodates and gives you that front of center option. Because if your arrow's too heavy, you just can't put all that weight up front to get that FOC. Then the whole thing becomes a 600 grain arrow instead of a 480 grain arrow or 440 grain arrow with heavy FOC. It's hard. You got to have that. The whole arrow and the back half needs to be lightweight, but yet perform well and be stiff. And Black Eagle X Impact achieves that. So I love what I shoot. Love it. For heavy winds, for penetration, for flight, I don't have to aim off in wicked winds. Like, it's incredible. And through punching through brush and just having a lighter setup, but with the weight up front, I just get way more wicked flight and penetration. So check out Valkyrie there. And if your bow shop doesn't carry Black Eagle arrows, go ask them to carry them. Check out, get them in the shop there, because they're a great arrow. I also like the Black Eagle Rampage. In fact, that's what I set up for my TAC events. Black Eagle Rampage arrows. Get a couple dozen of those so I can just send them into the stratosphere, blow them up on rocks as I miss arrow, shot after shot. I can get a flat shooting kind of setup going. I just like building those for just shooting, but for killing game, I want the Valkyrie Broadhead delivery system. So check that out, folks. And if you want to win a Hoyt RX4 Ultra, we're giving one away right now. That bow retails for $1,750. Sweet bow. We're giving that away to the people who have become supporters over on our gritty.locals.com group. It's our Gritty Stealthy group. Ryan and I have got a little community over there. If you go to gritty.locals.com and you sign up, it's $7 a month, and you're going to get access to exclusive film and podcast content that you can only get as a member, that you can only get as a supporter over there. And if you join up right now, you're entered to win the Hoyt bow, which we're going to announce on April 19th. In addition to that, we're dropping a couple movies this month that are pretty long. I mean, they're like 30-minute films that are cool films that no one has ever seen, and is just for the people who become supporters over there. We're still going to produce a ton of content for our regular YouTube audience. But if you want a little extra and all you got to do is pitch in $7 a month. It really helps us. So we're not so dependent on corporate sponsors. We're not so dependent on the YouTube platforms, and really helps us grow that independence, which Ryan and I are really seeking. So check that out. Get yourself entered to win a Hoyt bow. Just go to gritty.locals.com and become a supporter. And then right now this week, you get 20% off at Mountain Ops if you use the code GRITTY. So you get a big discount there, and I think free shipping as well. So, and get yourself the new merino hoodie setups, the new workout clothes. Hopefully they're not sold out. They sell out quick. Everything does. Seems like right now across the nation, everything sells out quick. A little behind due to the COVID stuff. So anyway, hunts are coming up. They're just around the corner. So if you need some trekking poles, some gaiters, if you need a canvas cutter bedroll, goat knives, if you need a new skinning knife, replaceable blade knife, backcountry fuel box, if you need some food, Heather's Choice, if you need some other food.
Cracks off. You need some game bags or some sweet boot dryers.
Yeah, the boot dryers. That's another one.
Boot dryers are money.
Seek Outside, shelter, stove. You better get on that quicker, sooner than later. If you got a fall hunt and you need an alpaca raft, you need to get on it now.
I was going to say, it's spring. It's too late.
We have discount codes with all of those companies. And
check the description fields.
Description field below in the YouTube videos, and you can access all of that. And it helps all of us out. So check it all out, and good luck this season. I'm getting ready to head out for like a 3-week bear hunting marathon. So pretty stoked on that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Got my backcountry TI dialed from Weatherby, and hunts are almost here, man. They are here. So that's it. Let's get started. Hope you enjoy this one. Stay gritty. All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am joined today by my good friend Cory Miller, and I can't really say from XXX Archery anymore.
No, it's crazy.
It's been a wild ride. Cory, for those, a lot of you might know who Cory is, because if you've been with Gritty for a long time, you'd know. But Cory was on episode numero uno, the first episode of the Gritty Podcast.
Yeah.
How does that date you?
Oh.
The very first episode I ever did, Cory was one of the guests, and it was in your archery shop.
Yep.
In Rainier.
Little town of Rainier, Oregon.
And what is it been 7 years or more? 8 years? I know I've known you for at least 10 probably. Yeah. And then, it's been a long time.
Yeah. Crazy ride. Things have changed on both of our parts, on where it started and where things are kind of coming full circle again, and going good. So
let's get into that. I wanted to get you on here and kind of get an update on what you've been up to, because my life is all public, like on full display for the most part. But I've seen you not too long ago kind of shut down the shop, which was that had to be scary a little bit.
Oh, it was definitely scary. Everybody, because I landed a dream job, working actually for PSE Archery, which, I shot PSE bows for 15 years. And so, as it was kind of crazy, because as the last probably 3 years with XXX Archery, my goals had changed of what I wanted to do, and my focus was to move forward on that side of the business of archery. Mm-hmm. And that opportunity came, but it was kind of a weird thing, because I was super excited about it, but I was extremely nervous about it, because I've been my own boss for 15 years.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is fun, but man, I don't have control of my life and a lot of things. And so,
and you had built a strong reputation with your shop, and we would drive, a lot of people would drive a long distance just to get your help, to get a bow dialed and sighted in, our arrows done up and all of that. Yeah. And you don't get that overnight. A Cabela's or just a box store, have the expertise in house, and so you truly do build a special thing when you have a local bow shop with the skills like what you have.
Yeah, and that was the other part of that goal for me, was to then be able to be a rep for somebody in the industry, to be able to travel around to other shops and help those shops be successful. That was very intriguing to me and very rewarding, and being that I've been in the industry for so long, I already knew a lot of these shops personally somewhat, but not business wise of really going into business side of things with these guys. So that was fun. Enjoyed it. And, I guess the news, and most people kind of know about it now, is, PSE decided to go to a different direction on how their reps were going out and working in the field, and they decided to go to a rep group. So, it's strictly a business decision on their end. And during that move, I knew it was going to be really difficult for me to keep my job because of the position of the location of where I'm at. As much as we think out west is huge, it's a small
market.
Yeah. And so, to me, the writing was on the wall of what was going to happen. And like they say, things all happen for a reason. And I truly believe that now. And I've landed into a different position, which I'm super excited. It's kind of like kind of like this thing going full circle. It kind of goes back into full circle again, because I think it was our first podcast was about Black Eagle arrows.
Yeah. The first solo podcast I did, just me and you, was
on an arrow build. And I still, to this day, get phone calls.
It was mind blowing. It was so educational and informational, things that I had no idea about arrows. You taught me all of that. And that was my first, exposure to Black Eagle at that time. And when we went over, the arrows that you were running and that you were recommending and why and how, it was super cool information. But then I met Randy Kitts, the owner of Black Eagle, at the ATA show, and I got to meet him face to face and person to person. And then as I got to know Randy over time, I grew to really, really appreciate the man and respect him, as not just as a business owner, but just as a human being, as a person.
Yeah.
And he's just salt of the earth, good human being. And it's refreshing to work with people like that. Yeah. And he's doing his best to make a super excellent product. So you introduced me to all of that. And to this day, I'm still shooting Black Eagle, and Randy is still the same good dude. And I'm just grateful for the relationship that we've had.
I remember, just how great of a guy he was, just being able to call and he would answer. And there was times where I would call him and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm on the beach with my wife. We're on vacation. I'm like, Randy, he didn't need to pick up the phone, and he's like, oh, it's all right, brother. And I know it's you. And he goes, what do you need? And I'm like, well, I need some arrows. We need to get, I see you're out of stock on this or something. And boom, 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 he's taking care of it. And vice versa, just out of the blue, he would call me up and thank me. Just, hey, I just want to let you know I appreciate everything you've done to help me get to where I am today. And never forgets where he came from, and the people that brought him and helped him a long way, and vice versa. It goes both ways with me. And so I had an opportunity to actually now go to work for Randy, and I jumped on that in a heartbeat. It was like,
I love it.
It was like, there's a reason why I guess everything played out the way it did. And so I'm super excited for this opportunity now.
It can be a roundabout journey, but it's ironic that after all this time you circle back full circle, and here we are again years later, both sitting here and talking about arrows, but it's the same arrows all these years later.
Yeah.
And
we made a couple improvements on.
Yeah. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you about, now that you're working for Black Eagle full time, what is it about their arrows, besides the owner and the man behind the scenes and all of that? Because it's not just that Randy's a great guy. He actually has a killer product.
Yeah.
And what is it about the arrows? As you've been in this industry since forever, you know a lot about. I don't want you to throw other companies under the bus or anything. But
the biggest thing is the consistency of the arrow across the board. The way we sort our arrows before going into packaging and stuff like that is, so when you get 12 arrows, those 12 are going to be the same consistent arrow. Mm-hmm. So that's just, I think, where a lot of people can see and tell that difference right out of the gate of like, man, all these arrows just shoot, and they shoot really well. And dollar wise, I think, you're getting a huge bang for your buck too, with not only on the straightness, the spine consistency, all the way across the board. The fit and finish of the product is I think superior. There's great other arrows out there, but across the board of the whole line. I mean, and even some of our stuff that we say is 05 and most of those are pretty darn straight. They're straighter than that, it seems like. But that's the gist of it for me, is just the consistency across the board on all the arrows.
One of the builds that I like the Valkyrie system, and I've been shooting it for years now. I like the Jaeger Broadhead. I like that heavy front of center setup, and that Black Eagle X Impact shaft. That's what I've been primarily shooting the last probably 4 years.
Yeah.
There are not very many arrows on the market that can accommodate that build.
No.
And I think there's just a couple, and Black Eagle has that unique shaft where it can have that micro diameter size and have the lightweight nature you need to have, so you can have that extreme front of center, but it still has to maintain a certain level of stiffness, or you're not going to get that thing to fly.
Yeah. And
so how did Randy decide on that kind of thing?
I don't know on that. Because we started out with the Deep Impact was our first 166, and that was a great arrow. It's tough arrow, but it was heavy. And it still is a good selling arrow for those guys that just are looking for mass arrow weight.
Yep.
Right now, everything is really starting to shift toward that FOC. And so if you're really chasing that, it's a little bit harder to get that arrow to get a lot of FOC without getting so heavy.
Which is the case for most manufactured arrows.
But again, some of these guys are looking to get to that 500, 600, 700 grain arrow. Well, you can definitely get to that with a Deep Impact.
Right.
But X Impact to me is probably more now my number one arrow, personal arrow. It had been Rampage forever. I just love
and I ran that too.
That 204.
I love that arrow.
And now I'm getting older, so I'm pulling less poundage. So like that same kind of a build with a FOC system on the Rampage versus an X Impact. I can build an X Impact for around 20 to 30 grains lighter than I can a Rampage in the equal spine and length. And so that can allow me to shoot a little bit less poundage and still maintain the speed that I want to shoot.
Yeah.
And penetration wise on the X Impact is just by far superior on anything. And the bad thing is typically, unless you've got something to stop that arrow on the other side, you might not find that arrow again.
Right. And a lot of companies have come out with a solution for a heavier front of center setup. Mm-hmm. And even back in the day when we were running those Rampage shafts, you would do different things to increase the weight up at the front there. Again, just to give a little of that front of center flight and performance. And then there's others, and I've done this too, where I'm just shooting a 515 grain arrow and the weight is just distributed primarily throughout the whole shaft versus your front of center design. At the end of the day, if the arrow's heavy enough and going fast enough, I feel like you're going to smash something.
Yeah. I've went really heavy and I've went really light, and I still just kind of keep coming back to that happy medium, somewhere shooting around 270 to 285, 290 feet per second. Mm-hmm. I want to build the heaviest arrow to do that with the most FOC.
Yeah. That's what I've been doing too.
So in that, where for me, an X Impact, 300 spine, 100 grain broadhead, 100 grain FOC system on it, usually he's going to come in around 460 grains, which honestly 420 for most people is well, and 5 to 520, somewhere in there. Yeah. For me personally, it's always been around 440 to 480 has been a sweet spot for my draw length and poundage.
That's the same for me. 440 got me around 290 feet per second with like a 22% FOC, 440 grains gets me that with the, I'm shooting that Hoyt Ultra RX4 at 80 pounds. And, I don't have the longest draw length. It's like 28 inches.
Hurts my shoulder.
No, for me, I don't even notice, right? And it's no problem. But I thought about the turbo just to give me that. Maybe I could go 500 grains and still shoot, pretty fast. But what I did is I dialed that for coos deer in Arizona. And I just wanted a flatter trajectory at those end ranges.
Yeah.
But then I switched. I have a different rig for elk. I don't care if it's going, 270 feet per second. And I run like a 490 grain arrow.
My elk hunting has changed to where, the speed's not as critical. Getting to that 280 mark, because I've changed my distance pretty much 20 to 40. Anything past 40, I'm really focusing on getting a good range and setting a sight. And I probably still would never shoot past 50 to 60 if I didn't have to. Just my personal thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is. I've just been on too many tough blood trails before, and I don't ever want to be on those again. Yeah. And for some reason, I don't know. It's just not that important for me to feel like I have to kill an elk. My quality of an elk has changed. I'm not looking for typical score as much as just a mature bull. Right. If he's 280 mature bull, then great. That's great. Yeah. And if he's 360, it's a bonus. I'm
in the same boat. I had a bull this year that I really should have killed. But I made a classic error, and I kind of set up a little behind some bush instead of in front of it. But I was still enough. I should have been fine. But when I drew the bow back, the branch from the bush went right into the wheel of the cam. And I was like, so then I was trying to get the bush out while I'm at full draw, while the elk is standing there at 40 yards. And I'm like, and then I got it loose, and then I'm trying to lean out. And then the bull walked over to the cows and chased him, and that shot was gone. That bull wasn't going to score well, but he was an old dog that owned the group. And then the bull I ended up taking, he knocked out like the whole main beam of a 340 bull to take that herd, and body was massive, but didn't score well. And I don't really care about that anymore. I like you. I care about the adventure and the age class. The hunt itself. It was kind of weird this year. Going to the summit with Ryan for the last 2 years and listening to other guys' techniques on hunting elk. And I'm a caller. I love calling. And it intrigued me of doing the quiet hunt, even though I have like zero patience on stuff. Yeah. And that was a goal. It's like, I want to do that. And I ended up killing my bull this way. And I think it was more of an accident because I was still frustrated. I wanted to call elk, and it was a very frustrated season because there were so many people this year. Every time we did start to call or the bull did bugle, other people were on it, and everything got messed up, and it wasn't a real good experience of hunting. We ended up getting on a bull. We never made a peep. It was the first time probably in a long time, if not ever, that I've killed a bull without calling. And it was fun in a way, but it was weird. It's just it's funny because most of my bulls I've killed without calling, and like this year, both the bulls I killed the year before as well, I'm much better at being sneaky, them never knowing I'm there and killing than I am calling. Calling always seems to, I don't know. There's a lot of stress in calling because you got to make quick choices, you know, and you got to, I don't know. It's cool. No doubt about it. But
I'm not good at it. And I think the only reason I was successful on this one, because I was on the backside of the knoll and it went over and I could hear them and I could just see a head of a cow and then I could see the antlers of a 5-point bull and they could never see me. So I think if it would have been flat ground, they probably would have busted me because I can't sit still. And so this bull was doing his own thing the whole time. And then finally I knew if the winds would give me the time at some point, he was going to come over and check that cow. And as soon as I seen the bull, the 5-point picked his head up and ran. I thought one of two things: either he smelt me, or the bull's coming.
Yeah.
So I came to full draw, took 3 steps up the hill to give me a little bit more leverage, and here he come clunking, walks right by me at 30 yards and shot him.
I'm like you nowadays. In terms of that 20 to 40 yard kind of, I can pull up almost any pin, and I'm in the ballpark, especially on an elk, without a lot of, without really adjusting a sight much, or there's a lot of forgiveness in that range based on the speed that I'm shooting. And, but anything beyond 40, beyond 50, which I'll take those shots. But I'm very, very picky about it. Very selective. This year I killed my bull in the open country. It was like 74 yards or something. But I had been watching this bull for 2 hours or so. Ranged him. I felt good. I was calm. I had a really good shooting platform. The wind had died down. Like, I felt calm. I made that shot a lot. And, I ranged him, had the exact yardage, dialed to the exact yardage. So finally I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. And usually if I take a longer shot, those are the conditions under which I do it.
Well, and I would say that probably why I don't like to shoot longer, because I am a caller. And anytime you're calling, you're giving away your location.
Yeah. They're switched on.
And then they're on awareness. They're trying to constantly look to see any type of movement because they believe that there's an elk there.
Yep.
So that's where that becomes
absolutely
difficult.
I can't make that shot if I'm under duress or he knows I'm there or there's pressure. Yeah. Like, I could just let down if I wanted to at any point in that shot and he would never know I'm there, and I could continue. I could wait for him to come even closer. I can make decisions still. Yeah. I'm not boxed in. And in fact, the bull, you mentioned this, the bull I shot the following, because I shot 2 bulls this year. The second bull, it's just as you described. I could have cow called and stopped him somewhere between 60 and 70 yards. He went through this opening every morning, back and forth a couple of times. A couple of times he stopped. I ranged him 68 yards, dialed, drew, and then he walked before I could get the shot off. I just refused to guess at that range. Yeah. And I refused to cow call to stop him, because then I'd have to make that shot at a longer range under that pressure. Yeah. And he'd look right at me and I'd still want to range and dial. I could have said, and some guys would do this in a heartbeat, I could have dialed to 65 and then just shot high or low, right? But that window, like, he'd run around and stuff. And I'm like, there's a big difference. And once you get to full draw and you cow call, and then you're like looking through a peep, or you're looking around, you're trying to guess, okay, there's that bush and there's that. And okay, I think he's 68, or no. It just, a lot goes wrong right there. Well, so I just am more selective. I didn't take those shots.
And that's the other thing with my setup too, is I run a 20-40 pin, which I don't shoot an up pin, so they're coming from the side. But at my speeds, that usually gives me a gap. So that 20-40 gap on an elk target at 50 yards is back to belly. So it's kind of a built-in rangefinder system.
Yep. That's genius.
So and I know what my hold is on that. So say a bull does come in, I come to full draw, boom, he boogers, he runs out, stops, turns to look back. I'm already at full draw. I look at my pins. If my pins are inside of him, he's under 50. Mm-hmm. So that means I'm going to put 40
Cory,
top lung.
That's a lot of damn math. Okay.
Well,
that's why I like the Garmin Zero.
Yeah.
Folks.
Well, unfortunately, those aren't legal where I'm at. So that gives me, and vice versa. If he stops and he turns and my pins are above and below him, he's past 50 yards. I have no business taking this shot at this quick moment with the sight set where it is.
Yeah.
So that gives me a yay or nay pretty quick. And that's what I like about that 2-pin system. It cleans up my sight window and it gives me kind of a built-in rangefinder. If my pins are in the vitals, I'm just punching it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to hit him where he's at, because at that distance, no matter where, my 20 will hit him top of the lung, my 40 will hit him at the heart. Yeah. So
you're there.
Just hit the trigger.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to do it, and you could really hone that into on a 3D range and through practice.
Yeah, I've got a full-size elk target in the backyard, so I do a lot of just stepping them off and kind of playing my holds. But in the perfect
that's what I mean. Like, I think when you are calling in, you need to have that stuff. You need to have a system, for that. That's one of the reasons why I really do like sneaking in and they never know I'm there. I feel like I'm in the driver's seat the whole time. Yeah. And there's never a rush. I can take my time and I don't miss, I don't have very many errors like I did in the past. So but I know people who are the opposite. They do so much better when it's just pull, guess, shoot. It's hot, heat of the moment, when they're actually in the situation I'm in, there's a lot more stress and panic.
Yeah, there's definitely, the longer you can think about something, the more you can allow negativity or other nasty thoughts into your brain. So a lot of times when it's just a reaction,
you've hammered that muscle memory and stuff into place.
You don't have time to think about some of the other stuff. And that's, that other stuff got me in trouble this year. I remember what buck fever is all about because I had never shaked so hard and I seen the bull way too early, and then he ended up coming and he just head back, laid back, just let out a bugle. And it was the perfect scenario. No idea we were there.
Yeah. Happens,
but
it still happens.
I knew I was there and I was rattled.
So on the bull this year, how much did your arrow weigh?
Like it was actually a pretty lighter system. It was around that 450 range.
Okay.
And I shot a kudu point for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Ryan shot those quite a bit in the past.
And I'd shot him in the backyard for plenty, almost yearly, and just kept saying to myself, why am I not shooting this? Because it shot so phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so this year I decided I would do it. And, I had good success with it. I killed 3 animals with him. Everything fell in sight. People talk about blood trails. I don't care about blood trail when you watch them fall, I guess. But, blood wasn't bad on any of them. But they didn't go very far. But shot placement on all 3 of them was good. Perfect. And that's the most important part of it. Put the arrow where it goes and good things happen, and they happen fast. Shot 2 whitetails out of the tree in Montana. And, that kind of going back into, just being quiet, you can draw back, let down, you can choose when and how to shoot because you're not finding that one little window, and that is very nice. But I also shot 51 pounds out of a tree, which makes me really want to go to elk hunt at so much lighter poundage because, man, I aimed and I drew the bow so easy. Everything was just solid. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I haven't really even, because I haven't really totally figured out which bow I'm going to shoot, what model. So I haven't really figured out an arrow build yet. So I'm kind of behind the ball on doing some of this stuff right now.
I've been running the Black Eagle X Impact. And then, like in Arizona, I wanted to, like I said, a little faster rig just because Coues deer are so fast.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to shoot a little flatter at those longer ranges. And so I went with that it's like 438 grains or something total in the end. But I was running that.
Are you still pulling 80 at that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's still moving fast.
And I think I was shooting at 290 right in there. And so that's, when you start going faster than that, especially if you're shooting a fixed blade, I just feel like you can run into a lot of issues with tuning and getting arrows to fly well.
Yeah, there's no doubt on that. It can get finicky under stress, and so and that's where forgiveness comes in. Is where you want is when you are under stress and you make mistakes, those misses are only 2 inches or 3 inches instead of 6-7 inches type of thing.
Right.
So where you can make kind of that same mistake, and it's like, man, that's way out there. I've got to change this setup, whether or not it be poundage, broadhead, vane, arrow spine.
This year, I did go and run the Brent Hahn was there, and he had the Valkyrie that Hyde broadhead, the mechanical. Yeah. And so I threw that on there. It was 180 grain. And you normally run 200 grains on all the setups, but I put 180 up there just to sneak a little more speed into this arrow. And I still had greater than 20% FOC up there. But I ran that thing, and the arrow flight, I was running the heat vanes
from boning.
And they had a pretty... They were 3 fletch, and they have a pretty solid helical on them because Jeremiah Plyer down at Wild Arrow, they like to build them like that, and Cody Jones, and so I tested my other setup with some 4 fletch with an offset, but then I've been running that setup, and I really like it. I really am getting some. At those, I'm grouping really well at 90 yards. And when I throw the broadhead on, I switched over to Brent's a long range broadhead instead of the Jagger with the longer tip. And the long range head looks kind of like a Montec.
Okay.
Not even a Montec. Kinda. But it's vented and a little shorter, doesn't plane as much. And again, those are shooting right in line with the field tips without much effort at all. So I really enjoyed that setup. And I actually really mostly I'm concerned, I wanted to group well out at those 80 to 90 ranges. I'm finding like this gives me that even in wind and stuff like that. I like that front of center.
Yeah.
I did shoot like a 515 grain arrow that didn't have a heavy front of center. Then I switched to a heavier front of center. And when I switched from just a heavy arrow throughout the build to a front of center heavy, again, I mean, it's almost like the fletchings aren't a big part of the flight. They're just enough.
Yeah. I'm going to shoot a tack vane this year.
Tack.
Levi Morgan does them. They're really light, but they're extremely stiff. It does make me a little nervous because when you kind of pluck them, they have a little bit of noise to them because they are just really thick. Mm-hmm. Or not, they're not thick, but they're just stiff. Like
okay.
But they're extremely light. So, but because they're so stiff, they're extremely quiet in flight. They don't flutter. You get some vanes that do have a little bit of softness to them, under speed, they'll start to flutter a little bit. So you'll hear that going down range a little bit more. So I'm excited to play with that vane. I
am a little bit like that helical is so steep, but then there's just 3 vanes instead of 4.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of shooting like about the same.
Yeah, that's one, I've kind of, as I talk to guys about, if you're going to do anything on your own, learn how to fletch your own arrows. End of story, because it gives you so much ability to play. 3 fletch, 4 fletch, helical, offsets, all this different stuff. You can get too much helical where your groups really didn't get any better, say at 50 yards or 60 yards. But point of impact was 12 inches difference because that drag just slowed that arrow down so much that it shot so much lower. But my group size didn't change. So I'm going to stay with that flatter shooting, same group. If I'm shooting a baseball versus a softball, I'm going to take the baseball. But now, if that top group was a softball and that bottom group was a baseball or a golf ball, I'm going to take that thing all day long, even though it's dropping more, because accuracy is still got to be the number one thing. So, but by playing with 4-fletch, 3-fletch, helical, not helical, 3
different brands,
different brands of veins, all that different stuff, you can geek out all on that stuff, and then once you find your formula, you booger up a vein, you're making it just like the other 11 arrows in your quiver or whatever it is. So get yourself a jig, do your own, fletchings.
Or a couple of jigs. Because I do remember showing up at the range early on with dudes that had been shooting a long time and were good shooters. And when they're doing their builds, they'd show up with a few different arrows with all sorts of vein combinations, different broadhead tips, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd go out there and they'd shoot all of them, and they'd find those arrows that kind of group the best. Now, that's an expensive endeavor for a lot of just regular dudes because we were getting these arrows for free. But I was able to see for the first time someone do that. And, absolutely. You could see there were arrows that were just all-stars with this particular bow even. Yeah. Another bow, totally different arrow.
But people need to realize too, they buy an arrow, there's other factors that can make that arrow shoot, not only just the different broadhead or the different vein, the vein manufacturer, the offset, not offset, helical, 3-inch vein, 4-fletch, all those things, but also
the knock.
Well, the knock is a very important overlooked item, but the bow poundage, so many people get stuck on, well, it's a 70-pound bow, it's got to shoot 70 pounds. Well, that bow might shoot a lot tighter at 67 pounds.
Yep.
And people are too scared to.
That's why I get frustrated. That's why I get frustrated, Cory, when I got to switch a bow, every year, because I'll get a bow. I'll even get 2 of the same exact bow.
And they're not the same.
They're not the same. And I'm like, what the, and that's where I feel like when you get something that's magic. I had a Hoyt Defiant 34 with a hinge release. And with that hinge and that Defiant and the arrows I was shooting, I was unstoppable. I mean, it was just you pull through. There was some squish back there with my form, and it was just, I was in full control. I was dropping bombs at 110 in an elk target with broadheads. It was probably one of my best. I won the old man division in that alpha bow hunting challenge with at No Limits with all the guys down there at Alpha, and I really like that setup. And then you got to switch, and you get the next thing.
The struggles of,
and it was for me. It was like an RX-1 at that point. And the RX-1 was, the handle was way low on the riser. It wasn't in the center. Everything had changed. The cams were totally different. And there was no squish at all. And I'm used to this ripping the wheels off and doing this pull through and stuff. And now I've got a whole different feel, and I can't hit anything.
Yeah.
And then I spent months and months figuring it out. And then I got it, so it ended up being one of my favorite setups. It was a long process.
But yeah, you just can't set it up exactly.
I can't shoot it the same. Yeah. I went to a thumb button instead of a hinge. And then I no longer was pulling the wheels off and pushing and pulling so much as just kind of delicately holding it in place.
Stagnant shooting.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, I was drilling with it.
Well, that's the thing, and people do shoot differently. I mean, some people are definitely pullers. Some people are more of a stagnant style of shooting. So different cams, different bows will accommodate that style of shooting. And then you've got grip angles, grip positions in bows. Those are other factors that come into what makes a bow. A lot of people, unfortunately, they judge everything just off of feel, like, oh, this one's deader than that one, it's a better bow, and not necessarily.
Yeah.
And then it's unfortunate because a lot of shops don't have the time to really set up a bow, put a sight on the dang thing. Maybe put a stabilizer on it, kind of build it like you would and see what it points like. If it doesn't point very well and another bow points better than that one, it's probably going to be a better bow for you.
Yeah.
It's just easier on your style of shooting.
I found that stabilizers are everything for me.
Yep.
Everything. And I don't know if it was always, lots of times I just didn't run one on hunts, or I don't know if it's just I'm a better shooter now and now I know the big difference, or if the bow is shot a little different then, but nowadays I need that back bar, I need that front bar, and I need it set up just right. And if I come to full draw and everything just balances and I execute, I am money.
Yeah.
And when I run a Garmin Zero, like in Arizona, and that big battery operated, thing is hanging off to the side,
you need more weight on the other
you need
side.
the weight to balance that thing, or you're really going to have a.
And it's not necessarily as much balance as it is leverage.
Okay.
So you're pushing against, if you don't have anything resisting, you can go every direction.
Uh-huh.
So if you have something pushing a certain way, I can push against it. Well, the way, as a right-handed guy, you don't have any leverage on the thumb. So we don't want our bow laying this side, because I can't pick the bow up by my thumb and resist against the bow. So we have all this pressure over here. So when we put more weight on this side, typically the bow's going to want to lay a little bit to the left. And so now I can actually push into it, and I've got resistance. Same thing with the physical weight. We're, the bow wants to come down, so we're pushing up on it, which holds us still. If it was nothing there, we can move,
right,
and we move a lot faster.
I think I had you one time, you just adjusted the balance using my quiver, just raising it up, tilting it forward and doing some stuff to it. And I'm like, whoa, that feels good. And I'm in some tight brush and I'm hunting, and it was like, that made sense. Or a tree stand. I don't need it. I don't want these stabilizers on there, or in a ground blind, but over the years, I have gravitated more and more. I just don't hunt without stabilizers.
Yeah. It's, people are like, well, I hunt really brushy stuff. I don't want that sticking out there. It's like, well, when you load an arrow, it sticks roughly 20 inches out in front of your bow. So if you can't put that stabilizer, that's usually 12 inches out in front of you, I don't know how you're going to get your arrow in there.
But there's just a difference in, I'm telling you, man, I am so lethal with with a bow that's really stabilized versus not. And there's all these debates I had read years ago, and we even debated this a few years back on some forums, and I'm like, I'm sorry, from experience, the stabilized bow is night and day.
I haven't seen anybody win
That's
without
true.
them. So
That's true. Yeah.
when you have the choice to use one or not use one, I've yet to see anybody not use one. Now, granted, there's a difference on these professionals on how much weight they're loading up on these bows. Some of these guys are running ridiculous amount of weight, and other guys are.
And that's a penalty when you go into the woods and you're backpacking in, right?
Yeah, and for me, on the target side of things, like, I don't get time to shoot like other people do.
Right.
There's a lot of guys that just shoot hundreds of arrows all day long. They've built up that muscle memory of being able to hold a bow that is, say, 11 or 12 pounds overall weight, if not more. I don't. So as soon as I get a little shake, I can never get the bow back under control. The fatigue wears in, the shot after shot wears in faster and faster.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of guys that still win with even, lighter, considered light stabilizers, nowadays, but they all still have stabilization out there. They still have something that controls the sight picture. And that's really kind of what you're looking for. Something that gives you something to point a little bit better and gives you confidence in executing the shot.
Yeah.
And being there, now Randy bought stabilizer company. So we have Conquest stabilizers, which are fantastic.
Which I've heard.
Fantastic.
I need some.
Yep.
I need some.
Can we shoot out here or not?
Yes, there's a target out there.
I saw that when I walked in the back.
Yeah.
But I've got some bars, and I'll show them to you when we get done. But the one thing, we have really stiff bars, but then as the hunting side of things, a lot of guys go back into that feel and the vibration. We run smack technology in our bars, in most of our bars, and it's this rubber that just deadens the vibration. And it's cool. We got these little balls, and you can drop them, and a regular rubber just bounces, and this goes. It's like sand, but it's still squishy. You can squish it and everything.
Wild.
And it just dead.
What's interesting, I was in the bow shop just the other day, and they had some stabilizers in there. I think it was
Conquest.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I dropped my pound. I wanted the arrow to go faster, so I dropped the speed. I dropped the weight of the arrow 50 grains. From like I got it down to 440. When I dropped 50 grains on the arrow, whoa, the hand shock and the noise went way up, Cory. Yep. Way up. And I was like, just 50 grains does that?
Well, 50 grains is about 18 feet probably in speed. So, you picked up speed, strings moving faster, all that.
So they went in and we threw on some stabilizers to deaden that. And it really made a huge difference. And because I've just been running those AAE, the Western system, but it doesn't really have that, doesn't take any shock or absorption much. And so you could really tell. So they didn't have any in stock. I used it on, Cody actually had the same exact bow, same poundage, same just about same everything. And so, but he has had the stabilizer, and I shot his and I shot mine. I'm like, whoa, there's a major difference. And it kind of surprised me that you're getting that much absorption through the stabilizers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that vibration's got to go someplace. And so if you can deaden that by the stabilizers, you can kill two birds with one stone with a bar.
Mm-hmm. Makes
most
sense.
Guys, that wasn't, on the target side of it, wasn't super high priority. They just wanted a real stiff bar.
Yep.
And they wanted to be able to withstand how much weight they were going to put onto that bar.
So have you seen Hoyt's new setup with the stabilizer?
The low mount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on that? Have you shot it yet?
Mm-mm. Well, and Matthews,
you've got your PSE bias.
No, because realistically, Matthews kind of had that flare, and they put a weighted dampener system down there.
Yeah.
Anytime you put weight below the grip, changes the way the bow feels.
Yep.
And it kind of changes the way the bow points. And then, so Matthews kind of started doing that. And then PSE added an upper and lower bar. Hoyt basically did the same thing, but just included a stabilizer bar down there.
Yep.
Which is cool, and I believe in it. I just kind of giggle because they talk about it, it does the 7 inches. Then I see everybody, they're running 2 bars. So they run the little stubby that comes on it, and then they run a 10-inch below it. And I think they would probably find if they maybe just put the 10-inch down below, it's going to do the same thing. Like I say, there comes a happy medium of like, how much weight do I want to pack around the woods? Yeah. And if I can just,
it comes down to
me, it's nice that Hoyt gave you an option of where that bar can go.
Yeah.
So whether or not you want to run the stubby, which I think it's a great introduction for guys who don't want to run stabilizers.
Right.
They can run something really small and still get the benefits of getting some mass weight down below the hand. But when you start getting leverage out, and the same thing with a back bar leverage out, that changes things. But just mass weight changes and getting some weight below your hand.
It's interesting. For me, I found that when it gets a little heavier and heavier and heavier, it shoots better and better and better.
There's 2 ways.
There have been times where it's been too heavy, and after doing tack for half a day, I'm starting to miss. I'm starting to shoot poor just because I don't have the muscle to hold that thing up
And that's where it is with
Then
me.
I start, instead of being in that position with a good push pull and everything, I start to raise this shoulder and then lock out my arm because I'm fatigued, and it's like a natural tendency to compensate for the fact that my muscles are giving out.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever done anything with Joel Turner?
Yeah.
So one thing that everybody's going to have their opinions on whether or not this works or doesn't work. And I think the system works really good for a lot of people, and a lot of people it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of other things along with the system that he talks about that is important. A lighter or a faster moving sight picture is somewhat better if you can wrap your brain around it.
Okay.
So watching a pin dance, it causes me problems because I can't trust it yet.
Mm-hmm.
If I learn to trust it, because like Joel says, it's always working its way back to the middle.
Right.
And it's moving faster to the middle. A slower pitcher, it sits really good, but when it moves and it moves off the dot, it's going to take longer and slower to get it back there. So when it sits there and you go, oh no, go back. A lot of times that get back fires the trigger and you're off the target.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you're sitting here and you just trust what that fast movement is, that humming, and execute the shot, most of the time it's that
there.
pin is going back to the middle the whole time anyways.
Yep.
So, but it's allowing your brain to see a picture that moves faster than what you're used to. So that's where my struggle is right now of learning to trust the faster pitcher, because I used to shoot with such a slower pitcher. And now with my age, that slower pitcher doesn't last as long. And so then I'm starting to find now that it doesn't. And once I get a trimmer, then I'm getting more slower movements instead of fast movement. So I'm trying to light my stabilized system up a little bit lighter on my target bows. So there is I do agree on what Joel talks about on that sight picture of what that sight is doing.
Running a hinge really helped me with just accepting the float and shooting through it. That was a major help for me over the years. Kind of opened my mind to a whole. I didn't even know the things I was doing wrong till I grabbed a hinge and started shooting with the hinge. And over time, I have learned that I often shoot better 70, 80, 90. I have less anxiety at those
Your expectations
ranges.
aren't as high.
I think that, but I also think the pin is so large and it's obscuring the.
It's hiding the movement,
and it's floating so much though. Like I know I can't match the pin to the dot. You know what I mean? Like I can't. It's just not an option. It's too far away.
Yeah.
And so I just am like, cool. I just need to hold it there.
And you break clean.
I just break clean because I'm like, well, it's there. But when I'm closer, I obsess if it's exactly there.
Oh, I've sat there at 80 and 100 yards and
you just kind of let it rip.
And I'm like, God, it felt like it. And I'll get to the next target that says 25 yards, and I'm like struggling to get the release to break because I was like, man, the sight picture sucks. And it's like I just broke 2 good shots at 80, comfortably without any problem, and then I come over to this 25-yard dot, and it's just giving me panic attacks because I can't get the release to break because the sight picture isn't what I want to see at something so close.
And it's all in your head because you're holding it the same steady as you were over there, you know. Accepting that, though, what I found was I was able to shoot those longer ranges and get super comfortable with it, and then move into the closer ranges and sort of carry that over time. The other thing that I found was when I am shooting those long distances, I'm shooting at a giant foam target or a 3D with a big backdrop of a target behind it. Yeah. Because the goal right now is to remove all the levels of anxiety for me. I don't want to miss at 90.
Nobody wants to miss.
I don't want to miss. So I don't want to deal with the stress of possibly missing and losing an arrow. Yeah. Especially when they're expensive and so on, or if they got broadheads. So I remove that stress and just practice the shooting. I already have enough anxiety. I don't need to add to it. But later, when I really want to compete or I'm going to attack or something like that, I do want that pressure, but only after I've built a really solid foundation without it. I've hunted with a lot of guys and shot with a lot of guys that are like, I practice at 67 yards on a little foam rabbit because that puts me all that pressure and then forces me to focus more. And I'm like, maybe that works. I find that just makes me worse over time because you're inevitably going to miss.
That's why I say there's so many things that, this person's style of shooting or instructions may work extremely well for your.
It goes back to like a hinge release. I talk about practicing with it, sure. And I love it. And I shoot it more often. I shoot it all the time. But when I go out and I hunt, I hold and punch the trigger. Period.
See, that was the
because
thing.
My heart rate is so high and I have so much adrenaline, but I can recruit enough faculty no matter how much adrenaline I have to go push, pull, stick, punch, and just put it right where it needs to be. But for some reason, if I do that at the target range enough times, I'm missing all over the place. There's a lot of anxiety with it. But with a hinge, no anxiety at all.
Well, that was like, I've never hunted with a hinge and I never wanted to because I never want to learn how to punch it. And I know when a heartbeat is out there and the animal moves, I know that's going to creep in. Now, this year, I shot the 2 whitetails with a hinge, but I also shot 50 pounds. And it was the most, for me, for some weird reason, it was the most calming and the best I've ever aimed on an animal with a heartbeat ever. That pin came right down, right where I wanted. I started pulling, it went click. And then it just floated and it was so nice that now I'm like, do I really want to do this on an elk? And so
the thing is, I've killed a lot of animals with a hinge and I've also screwed up a lot of shots with a hinge. I have very few trigger shots, like trigger, like wrist rocket or thumb button type command shots that I've actually botched completely with that setup. But I screwed a lot up with hinges.
So for me,
it's like hinges work when they work, but when they don't, they just burn you.
This is where it gets me in trouble on a button or an index. If it's a quick reaction type of shot, like I'm at full draw, boom, there it is, boom, it happens, it's quick and it's good. But if it's like, okay, there he is, I'm going to draw back, and now I'm going to try to aim on this thing, my finger or thumb does not want to be anywhere near that trigger because my pin is underneath the animal. And I'm just fighting to get my pin because I know as soon as I get my pin there, this thing's going to say, nah, now. And so my aiming, if I'm trying to aim on a heartbeat, my aiming goes away dramatically bad. Where on the hinge, for some reason, I know I can't get to the click until the pin is on the animal. And so the pin goes there, hit the click.
Yeah.
And just because I shoot so much tournaments with a click that it was like, I'm in my zone, this is what I do, and boom, it shot. But I'm still scared to do it on an elk for some reason, and we'll see what happens this year, whether or not I end up doing it. But
I don't know. At this point, though, I feel like I'm in a better position than I've ever been in terms of that shooting ability on live animals. I've kind of, especially like with a bow, I feel so good nowadays, and it's a nice place to be. I never had true like target panic like a lot of guys have or have had to deal with.
Or still deal with?
Yeah, I've never done that. Like Brinker and I talk quite a bit, and I haven't had that. But I did get a lot of anxiety with the hinge that I'd never had before on shooting at live animals. I kind of only went to the hinge because my groups were so much tighter at 100 with a hinge than they were with a trigger. And in every range, really. They were just tighter. But I still had good groups with the button or the trigger. I just had better ones with the hinge. So I thought, take it hunting.
Yeah.
And, and Dudley's like, do it. Everybody, tons of guys can hunt with a hinge. And I'm like, but what about the wind? And basically he and others like, you'll be fine. Come to find they don't really hunt that much with a hinge. So I'm like, why'd you give me advice to do that, but you don't do it? But it's different, like you said, for everyone.
Everybody,
if you've got something that's working,
do it.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so on your right now with Black Eagle, you're with your job, you're kind of cruising around, and what are you doing exactly?
so I do sales rep, basic job. So I go around to shops. I write orders for shops who are already dealers, whatever they can, get a hold of me, and I can write orders for them, put their orders in. But basically go around, introduce the line to new guys too, show them the product line, show them the new stabilizers, show them the bows that we actually acquired Dart and Archery. So now we actually have a bow line also.
So Randy owns Dart and
Archery. So I go in and show them all the stuff, show them their buys, and help them make a decision on where they can make money, and show them the products to help them, especially the new people. Like I'll interview them to a state of like, okay, well, what type of customers do you have? What do you normally sell? What are your customers wanting? I mean, if you've got a lot of guys that are coming in for an FOC type of arrow, this arrow in our lineup is what's going to help fix that. And this is where our arrow is a little different on our system, how it works. So that's kind of the base of what I do.
Nice.
So I travel all over.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's say a bow shop is out there and they don't carry Black Eagle. What are those steps? They just get a hold of...
Just get a hold of anybody at Black Eagle, get a hold of me. Depends on what region they're in. So I'm pretty much doing California, Hawaii, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And then we've got another guy covering some of the other states that also I used to work with. So he's got some relationships in Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico areas and stuff.
Very cool.
So yeah, so they can get a hold of any of us, and we're real easy to work with. So it's been fun. I've opened up quite a few new dealers already. I'm excited to see everything, across the board on how we grow.
Yeah.
And it's...
Well, I need to have you back. We need to talk about the stabilizers.
Yeah.
And dive into those.
Because you're going to be getting a new bow here. Or have you got your new one yet?
Not yet.
So, yeah. So it'll be fun to, we do front bars, rear bars. We do a whole kit. We do small diameter bars. We do a 500. So it's a 1/2 inch diameter, or a 625 smackdown, which is more of a premium carbon. It's kind of one of those things, you might notice it, you might not, as far as sometimes on the hunters, depends on how short a bar you're going. The longer the bar, the more you start noticing how stiff a bar is. So when they get real short, they're all stiff. So getting that really longer one. So if you're going to run 12s and stuff, you might play with that 625. If you've got the opportunity to play with a 500, see if it works on the particular setup and poundage that you're shooting, or that arrow weight. How much more energy is that putting through the bow that I'm feeling possibly?
Yeah. I want one of those 90-pound
you can't.
bows that,
you can't.
I mean, Cameron has one. I want one. But yeah.
No, you don't want that. It's going to hurt your shoulders.
I have such good shoulders. I think all the Olympic ring work and the handstand push-ups and just the years of taking care of them, and the strength in my shoulders are really good. So like 80 pounds is, I don't even notice. It's nothing. I've been doing 80 pounds though
most
for 4
anymore
years.
the bows nowadays,
they're so smooth.
They draw so much smoother. And we're generating more speeds too, which
but they're not gonna, I don't think they're gonna make one for me. It's just a cam thing.
Yep.
So I'll have to run 80, but I might try a turbo. I have an RX4 turbo I was thinking about.
Just call Cam, ask Cam if he can order it.
Cam, slide one over here.
Can you just order an extra one?
I'll see.
See if he'll just lose one.
Yeah. Oops. That would be sweet. Yeah, because for me, I want to pick up more speed, more power behind the bow, but not having a 31 inch draw length. 28 inches isn't, it's short, man.
Yeah. I can stretch mine out before my aiming goes bad at 29. And so that's 12 more feet for me to you, which is nice.
That's a big deal.
That's, roughly 8 to 10 pounds almost. Yeah. So poundage, you don't get it nearly as fast as you do with draw length.
Right.
So,
Right. That's why I'm like, but I just don't shoot beyond 28 worth a darn.
Yeah.
In fact, shorter might even be a touch better. I got short arms, man.
Well, yeah. I mean, once you get out of that where the shoulder's getting pushed out and you don't have that, it's not in its socket anymore and the aiming's going to go away. Same thing though. You can go too short and the aiming goes away also.
Well, it's really hard to then get right in that right pocket, you know, and consistently, I think.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about music earlier.
Yeah. It was funny.
So
Yeah.
I noticed that you've been playing a lot of camp.
Yep. I love their songs, man.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
There's very few. I love the voice.
It was funny because I stumbled on camp, and I don't know how I found them. I was watching YouTube stuff on some other folk type of music, and one of their songs came on, and I sent it over to Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Hey, you need to check this stuff out."
Yeah, yeah.
and I wasn't sure.
So did Ryan introduced me to it.
Yeah. So I introduced Ryan into it, and so yeah, it's I
Nice.
I got a couple of
people ask me where these things come about, like how I find music, and it's like, well, I'm actually always looking, always finding stuff, but camp has this perfect puzzle piece that fits so perfectly into what I like. I don't know.
You listen to the song and you can almost like, if you were making a music video, you're like, I could put this music to a hunting video of the outdoors, that lifestyle of nature and
the other ones. There's a few others I like, but another one is I like Benjamin Todd with the Lost Street Dog Band. And there's a few others. And then there's a lot I get from that I actually get from various like filmmaking sites, you know, but I'm really picky though.
Yeah.
It's got to fit that feel. It's got to be something I'm going to listen to in my truck on the way somewhere or just on the mountain or on a run.
What's the camp on, is it Moonstruck or have you put that one in any?
Yep.
You did.
Yep.
I haven't seen that one yet.
One of our bear films from last year I used that. It was one of the early ones I used. But it needs to make a return.
And then the wolf song is actually really good too.
I haven't heard that one.
The wolf one? Yeah.
No, I'll check
wolf,
that one out.
I think it's...
Well, with the whole music thing, we were talking earlier about who would you like to maybe... There's a few people in your world that you would actually like to sit down with. You'd even pay money to sit down and spend a couple hours talking to them. And we were talking about who would that be for you? Who would that be for me? Like, who would you pay to have just some access to for a little bit of time?
It depends on the access of why I was wanting to just kind of get to know him. But both of them in the music industry would be, Maynard from Tool, just because of his songwriting abilities. His music is so complicated. It just intrigues me on that. Yeah. But I also know him like enough to like, it bugs him when, the people thing. And so if I was to ever meet him, it would be like, I would want to like, just talk about other things other than that, and get to know other parts of him. But really another person would be Aaron Lewis, just to hang out with, because I think he's a cool guy of his lifestyle, his beliefs.
Aaron Lewis
used to be with Stain, and then also has his kind of like country also.
Yeah.
So he does hard rock and then does country, and he's a country boy and doesn't give two rats about anything.
Right.
And
this will piss a lot of people off. I'll tell you a couple of people I'd like to meet. It'll piss some people off, but I don't really care. And I don't think it should.
Beyonce?
No. This shouldn't bother some people. It will though, because it ends up being a political thing, and I wish it wasn't. But I'd like to hang out with. Well, let's start with I would say Steven Ranella. He's someone that we've met a couple of times, but I'd like to just be alone on a mountain glassing and just, I've always really appreciated his insights and his intelligence, right? And I just feel like we'd have a good conversation. There's a part of me that knows I'd argue with him because there's things I don't agree with, but I wouldn't care because he wouldn't be offended by the fact that
the difference about having different opinions is having someone who can actually have a conversation. Well, just have a conversation about it instead of just shut down. Like, nope, this is my belief and I don't care and I don't want to know and I don't want to listen.
And he has really affected my worldview at times, how I saw things. And I'm like, whoa, wow. And just caused complete paradigm shifts for me. So that's one person. Another person is Donald Trump. It's because he cracks me up, man.
Oh, he's funny.
And he's real. And there's so many things I think I'd just be curious just to hang out and talk for a while. He'd just keep it real, you know.
I think he would say some stuff that would just make you
You'd just be like, what? Joe Rogan, that's another person. And fortunately, I've been able to hang out with Joe a couple of times, but just having some one-on-one time would be cool.
Yeah.
Nothing recorded, nothing like just to hang out and talk for a little bit. Cause again, I'm fascinated by certain individuals who have just done some things that I find they've just talked to so many people in the world and experienced so many or gone down so many rabbit holes. They're just fascinating people.
Yeah. Well, that's with Maynard. You know, he's got 3 different bands. He's got a winery, does MMA.
Yeah.
You know, just so many different things that aren't just, you know, like a typical rock band of drugs and alcohol and women and just, you know.
Yeah. For me, another one is Tom McDonald. There's just something about, I mean, he's got face tattoos and piercings and braids but it'd be interesting to hang out for a little while and because some of that stuff's deep.
But I'd like to take, Aaron Lewis would, you know, he does hunt and fish and all that, so that wouldn't be anything new. But to take somebody like that isn't into what we do and take them out there, I think it'd be cool to take somebody who really appreciated it, who wanted to understand it, who never has had the opportunity to hunt and fish or do something like that, or just even experience the outdoors.
Yeah. Thankfully, I mean, given what I've done for a living all these years, I've actually been able to spend quite a bit of time talking to people and meeting those people. That list is short because I've actually been able to talk to people I've always been curious about. So it's a pretty cool journey. Anyway.
Is that the wife out there?
Yeah, she's out here. We got to roll. Okay. So anyway, Cory, where can people find you? They want to reach out? Are you on social much? Come on.
I'm trying not to be anymore, but yes, Cory Miller on Facebook. Yeah, I don't know anymore. I just kind of want to get away from it as much as it's a.
How can they get a hold of you through the PSE line?
No.
I mean,
they can't anymore.
How can they get a hold of you when they want to? How can people get a hold of you if they're into the Black Eagle? Do they just go straight to Black Eagle?
Yeah,
site?
right now they can probably go through because everything's just now starting. So going through Black Eagle, they can give them my contact also off of there. But yeah, social media, you can find me, and I don't even like Twitter, even Instagram. I don't even know what my handle is. I don't really get on that much anymore. And just Facebook.
I'll put some links down below in the description field on the YouTube video of this podcast, as always, and you can find some stuff there. And
my phone number's on my Facebook page.
You're a bold man.
I know.
All right, folks, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Got any questions? Leave them in the comment field of the YouTube videos. It's usually where we spend our time kind of getting back to people. And thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.